You're listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the hard biblical questions because we dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
See the light. I wanna see the light.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today on Give God 90. While we were having some questions concerning what we were listening to, because, you know, when you do this live, and we are live right now, it gets kind of strange, and then with the introduction of using the ads at the beginning of this, it gets confusing when you're trying to monitor everything and make sure it's going right and everything's working. But we're going to trust that everything is right and working. And
I'm trying.
I wish we could go back live so you could see what's going on here. I mean, trust me, it's worth the show. We could sell tickets to this show, I think. Anyway, my name is Jerry Mitchell. Sitting beside me is, of course, as usual, is Myra. She is helping me this evening, trying to keep me on track, keep me straight with everything that we're doing and everything, you know, that's going where it's supposed to be going, and making sure that what's happening is happening and all that good stuff. We have had some news from Spreaker, the people who carry the podcast for us. Excuse me, and they also are the ones who update the free app. They're going to stop doing that in the future. That what I'm told so far is what we have now will continue exactly the way it is. It just won't be updated. I have a feeling that what's going to come out eventually is they're going to update the Spreaker app so you can go through that to access the show, and there'll be a list of favorites and that kind of thing that you're going to have as you know, in place of the direct application. Did I say that right? I think I did.
So.
Anyway, hopefully you'll understand that as we get going. The chat is open, so it's available for you tonight. Just, you know, if you have the Spreaker, if you have the Give God 90 app, there's a place on there where you can, I think it looks like a little communications box, if I remember right. I'm not looking at it right now. But, okay, open that. Actually, you touch that there. Yeah, it's a little, like a balloon cartoon chat thing. If you touch that right there, you can then chime in and speak directly from your mobile device. So that's available. Of course, if you're on a desktop or a laptop, something like that, it's available anyway. So that's how you get where we are. Was there some... next week, there's a holiday coming up that you might be interested in. It's called Purim or Purim, depending on what part of the world you're from, how you pronounce it. I may actually address that next week, because we may be missing something. You know, we are told to tell the story. And that's what a lot of people do, is they read the book of Esther. They read about how she was willing and able to do the things she was willing and able to do because she was faithful to the Almighty. But there may be more to this story than meets the eye. So as we look at that and we dig into that a little bit, it might be time to reconsider how we view that. So that will be done. Now, this week, what we're looking at is something that everybody should know the history to. Okay? So if everybody knows the history to this, we're looking at when and why Israel was divided into two kingdoms. And of course, for the more astute biblical people out there, you know that happened after Solomon's death. But as we look at that, we look at why it happened, not so much how it happened, but the reasoning behind it. What led to this? What's going on that comes to this, and where is it going? Now, of course, I'm going to start in 1 Kings 11, verse 40 through 12, verse 5. If you would like to read that first section.
Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam, but Jeroboam ran away to Egypt. He went to Shishak, king of Egypt, and Jeroboam stayed there until Solomon died. Everything else Solomon did is written down. He showed much wisdom. It is written in the book of the history of Solomon. Solomon ruled in Jerusalem over all Israel for 40 years. Then he died and was buried in Jerusalem, the city of David, his father. And his son, Rehoboam, became king after him. Rehoboam went to Shechem because all the Israelites had gone there to make him king. Jeroboam, son of Nebat, was still in Egypt, and he had gone there to escape from Solomon. When Jeroboam heard about Rehoboam being made king, Jeroboam returned from Egypt. So the people sent for him. Then he and the people went to Rehoboam. They said to Rehoboam, "Your father forced us to work very hard. Now make it easier for us. Don't make us work as hard as your father did. Then we will serve you." Rehoboam answered, "Come back to me in 3 days, then I will answer you." So the people left.
Okay. Now, aren't you glad that we don't live back in this period of time when you had all of those tough words to decipher?
Yes.
I think every time I hear somebody, when I hear people read the Old Testament, everybody pronounces things differently. And part of the reason for that is the way they've been transposed into English doesn't make a lot of sense. So sometimes it really makes them difficult to pronounce. But you did well. You've only been doing this for 50 years, so. Excuse me. Now, what we see here, of course, is Rehoboam becoming a politician. The people come to him and say, "You know what? Things have been going on we don't like. You got to do something about it." And he says, "Well, you know what? Let me circle back to that in about 3 days. If you'll come back in about 3 days..." Yeah, I went there.
You did not use that phrase.
"I will get back to you. Let me check with my advisors, and I will get back to you." That's a politician. That's a political answer, right?
Right.
So, yes, the politics and the Bible do mix because it's in here. So, he does get back to them after he talks to some folks. So, we're going to continue in 1 Kings 12, just a little bit further down the chapter, though.
Rehoboam had told the people, "Come back to me in 3 days." So after 3 days, all the people returned to Rehoboam. At that time, King Rehoboam spoke cruel words to them. He did not listen to the advice that the elders had given him. He did what the young men had told him to do. Rehoboam said, "My father forced you to work hard, so I will give you even more work. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with whips that have sharp points." So the king did not do what the people wanted. The Lord caused this to happen. He did this to keep the promise he had made to Jeroboam, son of Nebat. He had made his promise through Ahiah, the prophet of Shiloh. All the people of Israel saw that the new king refused to listen to them. So they said to the king, "We have no share in David. We have no part in the son of Jesse. People of Israel, let go of your homes. Let David's son rule his own people." So the Israelites went home. But Rehoboam still ruled over the Israelites who lived in the town of Judah.
Okay. Now, I said he was a politician. He's a politician. He said, they came and said, look, things were bad. You got to do something. And he's like, okay, I'm going to do something. I'm going to make them worse. Right?
Right.
So, the people thought they were getting something, but then it turns around and they didn't get what they wanted. Well, that sounds an awful lot like going back into Samuel when Samuel, asked the Almighty, he says, look, the people want a king. What am I supposed to do? And God, of course, told Samuel, look, you tell these people, if they get a king, all these bad things are going to happen. And they didn't care. They wanted a king anyway. Now they are only about, let's see, there was Saul and David and Solomon, now Rehoboam. So 4 kings into the kingdom, 4 earthly kings into the kingdom, maybe I should say it that way. And they're complaining. It's miserable. Life is terrible. Exactly the way Samuel said, the Almighty, this is what's going to happen, right?
Right.
So 4 kings into the kingdom, it's not that long of a time. And they hate it. Or some of them hate it. Kind of like everything else. You always have some people who like vanilla and some people who like chocolate. Some people like strawberry. Some people like coffee. Right?
Right.
Of course, those are all ice cream flavors for all the folks who might not know that. Now, Ayah had said that this was going to happen. And we need to back up a little bit. And you don't get a whole lot of background from where we're going, and that's okay. Because we're going to pick it up where it really just gives us the basic information. And of course, that's in 1 Kings 11, 9 through 13.
The Lord became angry at Solomon because his heart wandered away from the Lord God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice, and warned him about this so he would not pursue other gods. But he did not obey what the Lord had commanded. So the Lord told Solomon, "Because you have done this and haven't kept my covenant and statutes that I commanded you, I am going to tear the kingdom from you and give it to your servant. I am not going to do this during your lifetime for the sake of your father David, but I will tear it out of your son's control. For the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem, I won't tear away the entire kingdom. I will leave one tribe for your son to govern."
Okay. Now this goes all the way back to Abraham, believe it or not. Before Judah was born to Jacob, God made a promise to Abraham. He made a covenant with Abraham. It was a portional covenant that basically said, because you cut the animals in half, and I went over this just a few weeks ago, right?
Right.
Because you cut the animals in half and laid them out, there are parts or pieces or portions to this covenant. And this is one of the portions. Being able to divide or cut or separate not only pieces of land, but people. He's actually separating brothers here, is what he's doing. And I say that because remember, the 12 tribes come from the 12 brothers, the 12 sons of Jacob. Well, here's the interesting part of this. Because the Almighty has the ability to do this, he doesn't do it because the people were bad. He does it because Solomon messed up. Solomon wasn't faithful. David messed up. But David was always faithful to the Almighty. When Solomon messed up, he wasn't. He would wander off and go play with other queens of other kingdoms, so to speak. Our question should be, why did the Creator punish Abraham's children for Solomon's sins? Well, the answer to that is not as easy as you might think. He's not really punishing all of Abraham's descendants. He is actually setting some apart, the northern tribes apart, so that they're not going to become corrupted by Judah. Now, you might say, well, how could that happen? It's very easy. If things would have kept going, the northern tribes would have remained under Rehoboam's control, and he would have beat them with whips, scourges, actually. And what we would have seen then is a division of hatred among the children of Abraham. But instead, now, they just kind of separate and go their two different ways. But that's not the end of the story. Why else would he divide his people? Think about this. The lineage of Yeshua comes through David, through Solomon, and through Rehoboam. Had the royalty continued, the possibility of Yeshua, and this is going to sound harsh, but the possibility of being nothing more than a continuation of Judaic rulers was a real possibility. But because the nation was divided, the most certain way to ensure the end of a royal reign is to continue to divide the power until it's gone. You just keep cutting it off and cutting it off and cutting it off and cutting it off, and that's exactly what happened. Israel, at the time, was a powerful nation. It was a powerful political nation. But the cost of that worldly power was more than the people could bear. Now, once you begin dividing the power, you weaken the nation. But that's not, it all happened more at one time because it was just divided in half at first, and then continually, Rehoboam continually got weaker and weaker. Now, here's another thing we have to consider. How did Israel become such a powerful nation? Was it because the Almighty was standing behind Solomon? Or did Solomon, doing the things he was doing, how did this, in verse 9 of 1 Kings 11, the Lord became angry at Solomon because his heart wandered away. He was going after other gods. He went out in the world and he became a politician, right? He was dealing with other countries like he shouldn't have been necessarily doing. He was cutting deals here and going there and bartering different things away for other things, part of it was to build the temple, part of it wasn't. Part of it was just to ensure Israel would be a powerful nation. In fact, Israel at that particular time didn't have to worry about anybody invading. They didn't have to worry about a lot of things because they had made alliances with other nations. Here's where that led to, was because Solomon didn't do it according to the Almighty's plan. Now they find themselves divided. They find themselves separated. They had gotten to the point where they were arrogant. They had gotten to the point where they were prideful. They had gotten to a point where they had forgotten how they were supposed to be doing things, and now all of a sudden, they can't do anything. They are really now at a point where anybody can conquer them. The Almighty needed to humble them. He needed to flush out the arrogance. He needed to stop a whole lot of the negotiation between other nations that was going on. And this isn't the only time in history that we see this. Israel throughout history, every time that they had, well, let's just say, forsaken the Almighty, right? That's a good way to say that. He does things that hurt, right? He says, look, this is going to hurt you because you're way more powerful than you need to be right now. I need to humble you. I need to prepare you for something that's going to come down later that you need to be aware of. You need to be able to see it, and you need to be an important part of it. We view it through the eyes of Israel sometimes, through the eyes of Judah sometimes. But when we view it through the eyes of the world, it looks a little different. Because this isn't the only nation that this has ever happened to for various reasons. You know, Greece was a powerful nation at one time. Rome was a very powerful nation at one time. And as we continue to look at Scripture and continue to see these cycles of things that happen, it's really interesting that Shaul, or Paul, as he's writing to the Romans, he gives them a warning about the downfall of a nation. He has been able to look back at all of the history that he's familiar with, and he looks at Rome. Now, Paul is a Roman citizen. He looks at Rome, and he says, you're next. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but you're next. And in his opening statement, really, what we consider Romans chapter 1, near the end of chapter 1, we have about 9 verses that are the steps to the downfall of a nation. And if you want to read, this is 21 through 32.
They knew God, but they did not give glory to God, and they did not thank Him. Their thinking became useless. Their foolish minds were filled with darkness. They said they were wise, but they became fools. They gave up the glory of God who lives forever. They traded that glory for the worship of idols made to look like earthly people. They traded God's glory for things that looked like birds, animals, and snakes. People were full of sin, wanting only to do evil. So God left them to follow their evil desires. And they made one another's bodies impure by what they did. They traded the truth of God for a lie and worshipped and served things that were not made by man. But they did not worship and serve the God who made those things. God should be praised forever. Because people did those things, God left them and let them do the shameful things they wanted to do. Women stopped having natural physical relations with men for what is unnatural. In the same way, men stopped having natural physical relations with women and began wanting each other. Men did shameful things with other men, and in their bodies they received the punishment for those wrongs. People did not think it was important to have a true knowledge of God, so God left them and allowed them to have their own worthless thinking. And so those people do the things that they should not do. They are filled with every kind of evil, every kind of sin, evil, selfishness, and hatred. They are full of jealousy, murder, fighting, lying, and thinking the worst about each other. They gossip, and they say evil things about each other. They hate God. They are rude and conceited and brag about themselves. They invent ways of doing evil. They do not obey their parents. They are foolish. They do not keep their promises. And they show no kindness or mercy to other people. They know God's law says that those who live like this should die. But they continue to do these evil things. And they also feel that those who do these things are doing right.
Okay. Now, a lot of people, a lot of Americans that hear this are going to think that I'm about to compare ancient Israel to modern day America, but that's not what I'm looking at. I look at things a little broader and a little bigger. I'm going to compare what used to happen to nations, not just Israel, but Greece and Rome, to the entire world today. Because just about every country around the world are experiencing the things you just read. It really is amazing that we look around and we see, where did it, I can't remember what exact verse it is or which translation, because this is actually from International Children's Bible. But there's one verse in here that says, or one translation that says, people didn't do what God said should be done. People did what they wanted to do. They weren't smart enough to do what God wanted them to do. There it is, verse 31. They're foolish and do not keep their promises. They show no kindness nor mercy to anyone else. They're living for self. This is not limited to the United States today. This is a worldwide epidemic. People doing things for themselves all over the world. Leaders dividing the people to immorally replacing creator with created, dehumanizing people by humanizing animals. That's happening right now all over the world. We look around the world, political leaders, could our Creator be removing their authority, dividing the people? Not just in the United States, all over the world. We see it all the time. Just turn on your news. What is the Almighty preparing us for? He, I think, is preparing us for the reigning Messiah, the one who will reign with a rod of iron. He's dividing the world into two groups, just like he divided Israel a long time ago. This time, he's dividing the world into those who are going to be faithful to him and those who will not. The era that we're in right now, we're witnessing these things happening. We see it in the news. You hear it in podcasts from the extreme liberals to the extreme conservatives. They're all saying the same thing. They're all saying that this is happening. But there's nations in the world. Well, let's just look at Iran. Predominantly Christian, 70% Christian. But it's run by 30% of the population who happen to be Muslim. And they're extreme Muslim. I mean, there's a lot of people in the Muslim world that don't like what's going on in Iran.
That's right.
And it's just kind of sad that it happens. But, the politics is, well, that's their country. The religion is, we're still Muslim, so we're going to give them some leeway. Until, somebody says, you shouldn't be doing that. And then they get all upset. There's other nations where the majority of the people are oppressed by the few. Saw one on the news tonight. The division not of nations or kingdoms this time, but the division of people who choose to remain faithful, those who will never be deceived, as we read in Matthew 24. These are the people who realize and recognize that living the way we're designed to live, following the Creator's instructions, is crucially and vitally important. It amazes me that Solomon is well, he's considered the wisest man that ever lived, right? He had
Right.
wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
How could he be so stupid? How could he be so foolish? You can, I've often used in one of the sayings that I grew up with is don't become educated beyond your intelligence. In other words, don't let somebody teach you things beyond what you're capable of thinking about. I think that's what happened to Solomon. Solomon he had the wisdom, but he left it alone. He left it behind because he saw something for himself. He saw what he wanted to see. He's the one who would go out and make these inappropriate deals with other nations on behalf of the people of Israel. And some of the folks looked at him and said, this isn't right. Because of that, the Almighty sent, the prophet's name, Ayah, to go and say, your nation will not remain your nation. Your people will not remain your people. Today we look around the world and we see people all over the world. There's a huge, huge group of people who have come to know and trust the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But they don't know him the way they need to know him because he was never introduced to them properly. They think they know him, but they don't know him. They think all they have to do to be in good standing is, I just have to say this little prayer and keep paying my 10% that I make to the church every week, and I'm good to go. That's what keeps my passport, visa stamped, and I'm good to go to heaven. And they don't realize if they're not living the way they need to live right now, they might not get to be where they think they're going. Because you can erase your name from the book of life. And all you need to do, no matter what you say, what you need to do to erase your name from the book of life is live for yourself and not for the Almighty. It's pretty much that simple. Today, people are being divided into two groups. Preparing, does God need to make it easy on himself to do something? No. He can do it. He created what you see around you, no matter where you are, with nothing more than thought and breath. He doesn't need any help dividing people into two groups. That's not for his benefit. That's for our benefit. We're seeing this division happen because we need to see this division happen. Not just in our own nations, but around the world. The division isn't between Democrat and Republican in the United States. The division isn't even between left and right in any other country in the world. The division is between those who, they're not even, I can't even say believer and non-believer, because sometimes believers don't act like believers, right?
Right.
We should see, if you walk into a group of people, you should see a marked difference between the people who know the Almighty and those who don't know him, right?
You should.
You should be able to tell the difference. But you can't. Because what we have today is people who have never been properly introduced. Here's what we can do. You live the way the Almighty designed you to live. You follow his instructions, and you simply be the example that you are designed to be to the other people. They look at you and they're going to say, I don't know what it is, but I need whatever it is that you have. And they're not talking about, your car, your house. They're not talking about your shoes. They're not talking about, the shiny pencil you might have in your pocket. They're talking about what you got on the inside. I don't know what it is about you, but you got to tell me how you got it there. That's how you introduce somebody to the Almighty. But you have to know him first. You can't introduce somebody that you don't know. And the best way and easiest way to get to know him is by following his instructions. You say, well, what's his instructions? Well, it's pretty simple. You don't bow down to anything else. That's a good start. No other gods, no matter who or what they are. That football team that you're always cheering on? Are you replacing the Almighty with that? Are you replacing him with, I don't know, pick something in your life? The worst thing you can replace him with is an entertainer, because they're just, this is going to sound terrible, but it's the truth. What is an actor other than a professional liar? They're always portraying someone else, right? They never portray themselves.
No.
They're a professional liar. They're entertainers. Zoe, we were talking, was it yesterday or today, about fictional television shows, and how there was one a few years ago that people kept contacting me about and saying, could this really be the way it is? Could this really be the way it is? I'm like, no, it's a fictional television show. These people are actors. They get paid to read a script that someone else thought up. They don't even think these things up for themselves most of the time. The worst thing you can do is hold them up as an idol, or hold them up as some sort of magnificent person, because they're people. That's all they are. Some people like to hold up political leaders. Some people like to hold up religious leaders. Some people like to hold up, I don't know, pick an adjective here. I had a conversation one time with someone, and we were talking about what different gods may look like. And he says, there are some people years ago who would break off a tree branch and stick it in the dirt and say, this is my God. There are others who might look at a Coke bottle and set it on a shelf and say, this is my God. Sometimes I think that wouldn't be as bad as what we have today with so many people in this world who believe that they're their own God. You cannot pray to yourself and expect success. But there are people, I think, that try to do that. I don't know why they try to do it, but they try to do it. They don't get anywhere. Some of them have gotten into a position of power. Some of them are very rich. But it doesn't matter, because it's all short-lived. Their little world that they live in will come crashing down around them, sooner rather than later. Including, someone who may be promoted often as the richest man in the world. One of these days, people are going to see through the stuff that he says and realize that, you know what? If you're going to block the sun's rays, you can't have solar power. Right?
Exactly.
So
don't go green.
Here's another thing that we need to think about. Actually, it's something you need to think about personally. As you watch The Division, and you can watch it, just read whatever news article from whatever source you want, and you can see The Division. You have to choose which side of that division you're going to stand on, because you can't stand in the middle of it. You have to either choose the Almighty, you have to choose your Creator, or you have to choose the world. Hopefully, if you're listening to this, you're in a position to choose the Creator. Hopefully, if you are a frequent listener, you already have. It's not always going to be easy. There are going to be people who make fun of you and joke at you. Oh, you're what the term back in the 70s, Jesus freaks. You're just nothing but one of them Jesus freaks. That's an old throwback term from the 70s. And it's okay to be one. It's okay to be one. A lot of people in the Messianic and Hebrew Roots movement are looking for a word to describe themselves, and there isn't one. Because you can't put that group in a box. They just don't fit. Some of them really understand that it's not about what you call yourself, it's about what you do. And they just do what they're called to do. You have to choose which one you're going to be. Will you stand with the Almighty? And I mean all in. Like the poker table. You put all your, whatever you got goes in. Because if you hold anything out, you're not standing on his side. You're trying to stand in the middle. You can't play both sides of the table. It just doesn't happen that way. You have to pick a side. And that fence has a very, very, very sharp top. I believe two-edged sword is the biblical reference there. That fence is very, very sharp on top. You can't straddle it. It will hurt you. You will not wind up where you want to be. On the good side of that, if you do choose and you decide that, you know what, I need to live the way the Almighty designed me to live, but I don't know how. GiveGod90.com can help you with that. Just start with day one. I was looking at the statistics for it the other day, and on the 14th day, 13th or 14th day of February, there was about 400 people had been to that website this month. That is, I think, amazing and encouraging.
Very humbling.
Yeah. When you have that kind of traffic through a website that's really not promoted by anything other than a little bit of social media, and all of you folks out there who listen to this and share it and keep it going, that is amazing. And, the countries that it comes from is amazing. So, we appreciate every one of you out there who does choose to stand on the side of the Almighty, and all of you out there who do share this, put it out, make sure, and as I like to say, that your family and friends need to hear it, and your enemies need to hear it as well. That is, the greatest thing that you can do is introduce the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to anyone who is willing to shake his hand. So, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Oh, we are very humbled to have everybody listening to us tonight.
Absolutely. Until next time, hopefully very soon you're going to see another video coming out. I've had some great response from the last one we did about water in the Bible. Next one, we're going back to where I kind of got started with legends, traditions, and the doctrines of men. And as soon as we're done actually videoing that, I can get it edited and get it out, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Next Thursday, we'll talk about Purim, and maybe look at it in a different light. So, until next time, everyone, we certainly do appreciate each and every one of you. Have a blessed week.